Hey guys, feeper here back with another video for you. So recently I was talking to a friend of mine about 14 and he mentioned how he wasn't really enjoying the game anymore, he wasn't really enjoying raiding, and one thing that came up in conversation was how predictable the game is. Not just in terms of combat, but talking about like patch cycles, when certain things release, etc. So I decided to make this video to sort of throw out my take on the situation and also see what you guys think. So, is predictability hurting Final Fantasy 14? Now, what do I mean exactly when I say predictability? Am I just talking about job rotations? Am I talking about dungeons? Am I talking about raiding? I think there's sort of two main avenues that I want to look at this. The first one is more related to the combat of the game, so your rotation, the way the dungeons are structured, raid encounters, roulettes, dailies, weeklies, all that sort of stuff. And then the other is the frequency and the type of content that is released. You know, what stuff gets released in like the point 1, point 2, point 3 patches, things like that. So let's get started with the combat section and go from there. Rotations. So let's start out with rotations. Now bear in mind that most of my experience in this game raiding in Ultimate and Savage is either on Ninja or Warrior and Paladin. This is a bit of a tricky one because certain rotations lend themselves to more flexibility than others. For example, Warrior's rotation is more flexible than Paladin's because you don't have two strict alternating buffs that you have to keep up and use on a cooldown and manage the dot at the same time. Warrior, you kind of just put up your buff and squeeze in as much as you can under that duration, and all you really manage is your rage and infuriate. While I am a fan of not having the exact same order of buttons that you push every single time you do the fight, I do think the way that it works in 14 overall is a good thing and is fun. A lot of the fun in raiding to me comes from figuring out how I fit into the puzzle that is the boss fight I'm doing with my rotation. Do I have to worry about, okay, am I going to overcap with using this ability? Can I not use a Fell Cleave here to get an extra Storm's Path combo? Is the boss going to transition soon? You know, when's my buff falling off? And figuring out the optimal order of what to do, I think is very fun. Now, once you get to the point where you know what that optimal order is, then I guess it gets kind of boring. But I think at that point, you're probably already pretty much done gearing out for the raid tier anyways, unless you're like at the really, really high end and you figure those things out really quickly. So I think overall the predictability and the fact that you're kind of just pressing the same things in the same order for the rotation is good. I think it's fun. I think that's why a part of the reason why this game is so successful is because it sort of hits that niche for a lot of people. So overall, I think the predictability in your rotation is a good thing. Dungeons and raid structure. So now here's something where I think predictability isn't so great. So starting out with dungeons, oh boy. So I've noticed, I actually recently started leveling my summoner, and I was going through some of the A Realm Reborn dungeons because it was only like level 30, and it was surprisingly refreshing. You can tell that there was a big change in the philosophy of what dungeons are and how they should be structured and laid out once Heavensward came out. Dungeons like Hawk Manor and Sunken Temple of Quarn come to mind examples of things that aren't so linear. I think literally all the dungeons now are just you pull everything as far as you can, and then you kill the boss, and then you just pull everything, kill them, kill the boss. Like, and then the entire time you're pretty much just walking in a straight line too. Like, it's not really a dungeon, it's more of just an instance that you do to clear something. It's more of a means to an end. So while I do think that dungeons shouldn't be as linear, I don't necessarily think that something like, say, a vanilla WoW dungeon, where it's more of a big sprawling zone that you explore. There's more to experience in the dungeon as it's part of the world, and it's not linear. You double back a bunch, enemies respawn. That's like a very different thing, and I don't think that would really work in 14, at least not in terms of like being your weekly expert. I don't think many people would enjoy their weekly expert taking anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes to complete. I don't really think that's something people are into. But however, quick side note, I do think that some sort of like Savage level difficulty 4-man non-linear dungeon would be awesome in this game. I think that would be super, super sick to see how they could make something that's just, it's this zone that you go into, and there's, materials you can get in there to craft things. There's good gear. It's, you can't just pull everything to the boss and then kill it all. Like, ads have mechanics, stuff like that. I think a Savage level 4-man raid would be, or dungeon would be super cool. But anyways, that's not the point. I brought up Hawk Manor and Sunken Temple because while, at the end of the day, yeah, they're still linear. You're still going to do the same thing every time you go in there. At least in the Sunken Temple, you have these things that you pick up, and then you can unlock other doors to get more loot. In Hawk Manor, you go all the way to the bottom of the dungeon, and then you return back to the beginning, so you can go upstairs once you get the thing to break the seal. Just stuff like that. Even though it's kind of like an illusion of being not linear, because at the same time, it's the same path, but at least you're not literally just walking in a straight line. I mean, most of the dungeons now, if you hit up the map and zoom all the way out, it's just like a straight line that just zigzags a little bit. I mean, it's ridiculous, honestly. What if the next dungeon that Square released had you double back and then maybe some ads respawned before you could open up a room to the next boss, and you had to do something? What if there was like a secret pathway that was faster and you got to skip a whole boss, but you only knew that after you did the dungeon a certain number of times because you picked up an item or something? Just something to mix it up from just the normal, you go in, pull everything, kill a boss, repeat 3 times, dungeon's over. Like, it's so boring. Now on to raids. So for this discussion, I'm just going to kind of leave Ultimate out of it because it's a bit different and I don't think it quite applies to this scenario. And also, we haven't really had enough Ultimate fights to, I guess, really say if they're kind of predictable. I think so far they're all pretty unique, so I'm going to just kind of leave Ultimate out of this. Overall, raids don't fall into the same trap as dungeons do for me, generally speaking. I do think that some of the Stormblood raids started to just kind of repeat mechanics, and they weren't really doing anything new with them. They were kind of boring. The only Stormblood raids that I really remember are Chaos, Male and Female, Guardian, and Hallie. That's pretty much it. The rest of them, like, I don't... And Alterite, but that's just because that fight was god-awfully boring. Oh my god, it was terrible. But, they don't fall into the same trap quite as much. I think with Shadowbringers, they're doing a much better job. Eden's Prime and Levy obviously weren't really great last year, but 2 and 4 were a lot of fun. Titan was a lot of fun. And I like, the platforms moving up and down. Like, that's cool. That's something new and different that we haven't really seen them do before. I really want them to do that. To do more stuff like that, I should say. I think this current raid tier is a lot of fun. I really like Ramuh because it's actually a difficult first fight. You can't just turn your brain off and do it. You do have to pay attention. So I do like that. I think they are doing better with it, but if they stuck to what they were just doing in Stormblood, then it would start to turn sour for me. With that being said, there are 2 things I would like to see them change. First off, I think literally every fight this tier just starts out with a raid wide and then into a tank buster. And I would like to see them kind of mix it up a bit. Obviously, it's not the end of the world, but knowing that the first thing that every time you pull a boss, the first thing they're going to do is just do a raid wide, it's just like, just do something different. I feel like that sort of shows that they're just kind of like, okay, we'll just do this and then we can get into some mechanics. Like, just get into the mechanics. Like, we don't need to just start out with a stupid raid wide for no reason just because it's like tradition. That's just boring. The other thing I would like to see them fix is just, please, for the love of God, I would like to fight a boss on an arena that isn't a circle or a square. Now, I think again, like I said earlier with Titan, what they did with Titan's arena was very fun. I want to see more arena things like that. While Leviathan wasn't a great fight overall, him destroying the arena and it coming back at least was something going on with it. I would like to see, I mean, what if there was a boss where the arena was like a weird X shape? And you had to do certain things with the boss on the X shape, and if you fall off, you die. Or what if the arena, where you fight the boss, it's just like a long corridor, something like the book fights. That could be kind of cool. More things like that than just big guy or big thing at the end of a circle or square. Like, it's just, I want more there with the arenas. I think that's the biggest thing. While the mechanics are good and they're using old mechanics with new mechanics and they're making new mechanics out of old mechanics, I would really like to see them do something with the arenas. I think that's the biggest problem I have with raiding in terms of the whole predictability. But other than that, I think raiding overall is in a pretty good spot, especially with Shadowbringers, especially with this second tier. But I would like to see them do something with the arenas. Roulettes, dailies, and weeklies. This is another thing that I think should see a change. I might actually make a separate video talking about dailies and weeklies and sort of how this ties into gear specifically, but for this right now, this will have to do. So I'm not really a huge fan of these sort of systems and MMOs. What I think it does is it sort of makes you look at what you have to do, and the keyword have to do, every week or every day, and then it just sort of becomes a chore. And this is another thing that my friend and I were talking about, where he's like, I just have to log in and do my daily beast tribes, and then I have to do my daily tombstone capping, and like I don't want to do those things because I don't like, he said he didn't like the dungeons because they're all repetitive because they're the same thing, and I agree. And he, the only reason he does it is because he has to do it for raid. Otherwise, he can't get half of his BIS gear. So while again, I'm going to probably make a separate video talking about the gear in this game, I do think that less of an emphasis on daily and weekly stuff would be good. It just doesn't feel good when you're like, okay, every week I have to cap these tomes because I just have to in order to be a viable raider. Like, what if you could just get that gear by some other method? And then the way, especially since the way that you get those tomestones capped very easily is to just do these repetitive dungeons where you only have 2 of them and they're just the same thing every time. I mean, the 2 expert dungeons we have right now are literally exactly the same thing. It's just the enemies have different skins on them. That's it. That's the only difference. I mean, I guess the mechanics are different too, but that's it. Everything else is exactly the same. There's nothing that you do differently in each dungeon. So having to do that 5 times a week, every week, just to cap your tomes, it's like, what's the point? Like, it's not interesting. It's not fun. It's not making you want to play the game more. It's just like something you have to do. It becomes a chore. That's all I'm going to kind of say about that. I don't want to get too deep into that because this video is already probably going to be close to 20-25 minutes. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, and I might make a separate video talking about those things specifically. I will definitely be making another video talking about gear in this game and how you get gear, because I think that there's a lot of things that I would like to start a discussion with about that. Patch cycles. So last up, we have the way that content is rolled out in 14, and for a lack of a better word, how predictable it is. So it's no secret that Square has a formula for releasing content patches, and that, on all the odd patches, we get certain things. On the even ones, we get other things, such as relics always kind of being released around the 0.25-ish area of patches, new dungeons and expert roulette, new story being like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc. I think it's good and bad. It's nice because we know that we're going to be getting stuff every like 3 to 4 months. There's no moment where we're like, hey, Square, where's the next raid tier? Like, we know the next raid tier is going to be probably what, 4, 5, 6 months out. Assuming the world doesn't end, probably 5, 6 months out will be the next raid tier, and then that'll maybe like an extra month, and that'll bring us into the next expansion. But we know that, and like that's great because we know those things are going to be coming. But at the same time, we know those things are going to be coming, and we know roughly when. So it kind of takes away from like the mystique of it and the allure. It's kind of hard to describe. Now with Shadowbringers, they are adding new things. Like they added restoration, they have ocean fishing, they're new diadem. They're going to be adding more relics than just combat relics in 5.25. All those things are cool, and I think they need to keep doing stuff like that. Because, while it's great to know that we're getting content, it's also not great to know that the content is just going to be, okay, so this patch comes out and there's a new raid tier and they're just going to get rid of these tomestones and they transfer over, and there's a new tomestone that caps at 450 a week. And then the next expert dungeon is going to change to the new story dungeon, and they're going to drop the other 2. Like, we know half the stuff that's going to be in the patch notes before they even come out. And so it's kind of like, is that really good? I don't know. Like, again, it's great that we know this stuff is coming, but also it's kind of like, we know it's coming. So I'm kind of torn on this. If I really had to choose, I think it is a good thing because we know that our subscription is doing something and we're going to be getting content from it. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I wish they could spice things up a bit more. Maybe they should look at, okay, well, there's a bit of a content drought. And there's always pretty much a content drought, the month before a new patch comes out. Maybe they're like, okay, well, maybe we can release this small feature like a month earlier, just to kind of spark the game up a little bit more. At least there's something to do for this month, and then we'll have the big patch drop. Something like that. I think they could spice it up a bit, but overall, it's fine. If they never change it, that's okay with me, but I do think that they could spice it up. And that's going to be a wrap for this video. So what do you guys think? Is predictability good? Is it bad? Is there anything that you think I should have talked about in this video that I didn't, that I glossed over? I do think that 14 is suffering. In regards to certain aspects of the game, I think that 14 is suffering with predictability. I sort of talked about the big ones that I think a lot of people come into contact with the most in the game. Something that I didn't talk about in this video is how I think the way that they've structured this game affects the way that they create new jobs. If you look at Gunbreaker is really not anything new. It's just like Paladin except with shittier cooldowns. That's pretty much all it is. I mean, obviously the offensive rotation is different, and that's fairly unique, but defensively it's just Paladin with worse cooldowns and camouflage. I've already spoken about that a little bit. Dancer is definitely different, which is cool. But, Samurai, not really that different. It's kind of just a builder spender. So I might also make a video talking about that, or I might do that in the gear video itself. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but regardless, if you guys like this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It'd really help me out.
You can also watch me stream live over at twitch.tv/feeper7. I have a new channel trailer up over there, as well as on YouTube, which I think is pretty funny. So please be sure to check that out. Lots of Final Fantasy 14 over there. With rating, we should be clearing 7 this week. And then, of course, we're also going to be having Monster Hunter World. So that's going to be a lot of good stuff. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.